Now let's start working on the modules which are required to be loaded on the Tabbar. For that, let's start by creating the first module which we need, which is the chat rooms module. Create a target for that. Create. Move it closer to the module section, and then modify its information. For that, 13. Let's connect modules. Compile fine. It does. So let's start creating the view controllers and everything, the whole module. This is where I'm gonna extract a template after I have created the router and all those things. I'm just gonna keep a copy of the basic structure so that we can start reusing it once we create the other modules. It's going to be the same structure, just that whatever feature that we pass to the use case or whatever we pass to the input output of the presenter is what is going to change mostly. So that's what it's going to be. So UI view controller, this is going to be chat rooms view controller. I'm not creating an XIV, instead I'll create a storyboard. Chat rooms goes within chat rooms. I'm gonna create a storyboard called chat rooms. Chat rooms within chat rooms. Storyboard is created. I'm gonna add a UI view controller. And associate that with the chat rooms view controller. Chat rooms view controller, and even associate a storyboard identifier to that. That's it. And let's add a table view, because this is where everything about the chat rooms is going to get loaded on this table view. I'm just going to keep it leading, trailing, top, trailing, bottom. That's enough. That's my chat room storyboard. And let's create the template I was talking about. It starts with the builder. Name is going to be the same, so it's just that we just create this one and then start copy pasting it to the other modules which I'm going to create. Builder, class builder, it's going to be public final function, which is going to be called build always. This is going to always return a view controller most of the cases. Import UI kit, and I'm going to return view controller, and it's going to be a static function, static public static function. I'm just going to keep it as view controller instantiation is going to be the only difference between each and every module, but I can always keep that for reference. So we are here right now. I'm just going to keep a fatal error needs implementation, implementation, so that it does not give me that error. Even if you use it, it shows a fatal error to you. Builder is done, and then create a presenter. Chat rooms, create presenter is node, it's going to be present. Let's create the first protocol needed, presentation, and let's keep that like that, but it's going to have a type alias called input and an output. Same structure always. and then you need to have a producer which creates your presenter, and then variable for presenter, input and output, input get and output. Then a presenter producer structure is going to be like I'm gonna call it as another type alias and calling it producer, which is more like which produces your view controller. So it just asks for your input. It's going to be the presentation dot input, and it's going to give you a presentation which is more like the output. Output in the sense this once this producer's closure is accepted or it is being consumed, it's going to give out a presenter, which is more like whichever presenter implements a presentation. So internally it's going to create a presenter. So that's the idea here. I'm closing closure, moving the producer closer to the input and output. That's done. So 3, this is the basic structure. Everywhere it's going to be the same presentation. I'm going to keep it like this as a template. I'm just going to grab it once we created the whole structure and keep it separate so that we just keep adding this everywhere. Now let's create the presenter which is going to implement the presentation, and it's going to instantly ask for the implementation. Implement, input is input, output is output. Same structure, and then I'm going to have an init, same structure. It's even init is going to accept some basic stuff. Let me reference once. So init, let's keep it as init right now, but once we start adding stuff, we need to just include that. So input is going to accept a use case. So I'm just going to keep it as a use cases, and use cases is also going to have the same structure of input use cases, which is more like whatever we are going to make a call from here. Let's say if it is, in my case, if it is sending a message or sending a chat, then that is what my use case is sending. Whatever I receive, let's say from once it comes through the WebSocket, some message comes back through the WebSocket. If I need to consume it back to the presenter, that is going to all happen through the output, whatever I'm defining through the output. Let's say if I need the logged in user information, it is there in the authentication or authorization auth interactor or someplace. If I need to consume that, it's always going to come through the output. Input is what goes from my presenter to some other external service or something. So, and output is something which I receive from external sources. So input and output defined, that becomes no compilation, it's fine now. Type alias use cases is defined. Use cases is nothing but all the interactive functions which you need to consume as a business use case is going to come through the use cases. That's defined. Now we need to have the router. Router for the chat rooms. Let's import UI kit because router will need it, and then let's create a protocol called routing, which is going to be implemented by this router. And I'm not defining any functions here because router can have multiple navigation functions to be handled. So that's what it does. I'm just going to keep a template router, and I'm going to init it. Init it is going to accept some things. I'm going to include that later. Extension for router so that it can implement the routing protocol. That's also done, implemented. And now I need a type alias called submodules, which is nothing but all the modules this router can accept. Let's say if it needs to transition to a different screen, it needs to have that submodule information within the router, which we will pass through the builder. So that is one thing which we will add as a dependency here. Also, router needs to know about the view controller which it is associated with. So UI view controller. These are the two parameters which we are passing. Let's create the references to it. Private weak var view controller, UI view controller, self dot view controller equal to view controller. So this structure is going to remain the same. Also the sub modules, private let sub modules information. So self dot sub modules equal to sub modules. This is also fine, it's not giving any error. So this is the basic structure for a router. This can be reused multiple times where whenever you're creating a VIPER module. So we are done with the router. Let's add some more bit for the presenter, because we need to instantiate this by passing some things here, like I said. So for initting presenter, things which might need is the basic template. We need an input which we can instantiate right away because we already have defined the input, and then we also need to instantiate the output. For that, let's create an extension function. Again, this structure is going to remain the same for any kind of VIPER modules which we are going to build. So this can be a private extension function called output, which can maybe accept an input, maybe not necessary, but yeah, I'm just keeping it as input, and then it gives out an output. So I'm just going to keep an empty, because this output right now is an empty tuple. If you see, go here, it's an empty one. Once you start having some values here, you just need to keep adding it over in this template. So we can just call that self dot output can be instantiated using presenter dot the output function which we define now, which will accept static. It needs to be a static function which will accept an input. It is accepting. Okay, that's done. And it might also need something called as the dependencies. So let's also define one type alias called dependencies, which can be anything. It can be input is one thing. One is a router. Routing is one dependency. Use case can be another dependency. Use cases. So this is another thing which I am gonna pass as a parameter, dependencies, for which maybe we can basically we all can have couple of private let variables for this. One is use cases and the other one can be the router. Let router is implementing routing, so we can accept that. So all that we then need to do is self.router equal to dependencies whatever you receive as router, and self.use cases equal to dependencies dot use cases. That's it. And if there are multiple other dependencies, even we can keep a if there are something else which are needed, you can also keep a reference to dependencies as well. Let dependencies, so that you can just directly accept the dependencies as a template, because we might even be passing something like a variable through this which can be used. Let's say a chat room is, if you are navigating from one chat room to chat rooms to a chat room, then you might need a chat room ID or something which can come as a dependency here. So that is what we might add it, like here, chat room ID string. So in that point, at that point, you can accept it through, like, say, dependencies.chatroom ID. You don't have it right now, just keeping it as a basic structure. So that is also done. So I think this is pretty much what a presenter structure looks like. I don't think I need more than this. And then one more thing called as function called process. I'm going to call it as function process, which where all the processing will happen. Process might not accept anything at all, just a function accepting no parameters. Can accept, use any of these, like dependencies, router, or use case, anything it can use to process some stuff. So that can also be something we can call here. So this is my basic structure for a presenter, nothing more. Now that's done. Presentation presenter. Let's go back to the view controller. This is where some bit of more work is required, and this cannot be we'll have to capture this every time you create it, but then this cannot become a template because we need to instantiate something during view did load. So for that, first thing first, we need an instance of presenter and presenter producer here. So we are already created in our other sections. We just need to grab it. That's it. Let's say in the chat room view controller. Okay, at least we can have basic stuff like this: functions ready, extensions, chat room. It just creates an organization or a structure, brings a structure to the project. That's it. Function, we need to set up the UI, and we need to set up the bindings, and maybe in the future, once I define the themes, right, I have to then do a setup theme as well. It's not there yet, but then that's also something which might come, but I'm not including it right now. But as a part of template, once we define that theme as well, it's good that you can even keep the theme. So these are a couple of things I'm going to call: setup UI, setup binding, and it's going to have that presenter creation over here, which is somewhat like this. I need to presenter private variable of presenter and the presentations producer. So I can just create a private var presenter instance, presentation, and private and a public. This is externally accepted. Presenter producer, presentation dot producer, presentation dot producer. Yeah. And now we can call this. We are creating the instance of presenter, self.presenter, by calling the presentations producer closure, which will accept an input. If you go to the closure, presentation producer accepts, it's a closure, and if it accepts an input, it gives you a presentation, which is more like the presenter instance itself. That is what I'm doing here. I'm creating the presenter by accepting the closure, passing an input. Input is something I will pass from here. Right now there is nothing within input because it's an empty input. But once I start adding something, let's say start navigating from the chat rooms to a chat room view, then I might just add some input here. Like it can be a driver of that tap event or something. That's what will happen here. And presenter producer's instance will be created from the builder. So this is where it creates a presenter by accepting the inputs, but its closure is defined within the builder. That's what we are going to do right now. So something like this. You go back to the builder. I need to import some things here now. Chat rooms. I'm going to import whatever we already have. One is the utility. That is the first thing that we need right now, because we need to instantiate the storyboard. So I'm just going to do that first thing in the builder. Import utility, and then gonna create the storyboard instance. Storyboard UI storyboard name, init, or even I can do this. Name is chat rooms. Bundle identifier is the current bundle identifier, which is like bundle. The static function I can just call as self itself. That will create a storyboard. From the storyboard, I can call. I have already defined a utility function using which I just need to pass the identifier to create the story. Okay, that's also not needed because identifier is already there. Instantiate view controller with the I think identifier itself. Let me just verify it once what we have done. Builder. You are instantiating and instantiate from the storyboard. Sorry. So storyboard has the reference. Let me go back. Instantiate. Is it not giving me the function? Okay, I'm just doing it wrongly. I have the view controller, which is chat room view controllers dot instantiate. So it's happening using the view controller. It creates a generic specific type for you, which is chat room view controller. Just pass the storyboard. So that's my view, which I will return finally. Return view. That's my storyboard. That's done. Now let's do the other associations, which is more like view needs to router needs to be created. Let router equal to router which accepts view controller which is the view which we need now created, and the submodules. So I can just say let submodules. Right now there are no submodules, keeping it empty, and it's of this specific type. Router.submodules, that's what I will pass here. So router is created. Now let me create the presenter view dot presenter producer. Let me instantiate that. Now it's a closure, so that's why we start with the opening and closing brace, and it will accept an input in and then use that input to create the presenter. So I'm just creating the presenter instance. Input is accepting an input. I can just pass the input. Dependencies is something we need to create. Dependencies is like we know that it is router and presenter. The router and the use case is the dependency, so we can even create that. Router, we already have created the router, and the next case is use cases. We don't have any use cases yet, so we can just pass an empty use case. What's wrong? Let's see. Use cases, it needs output, input and output. That's the reason. So we need to pass both of that, input and output. That's it. So we have associated everything. This is more like the template which is needed. So storyboard creation, view controller, instantiation, modules association, router creation and passing that modules, view controller also passed. Then create the producer views presenter producer, which will be instantiate the presenter will be created as soon as it is accessed within the view did load. Presenter reference gets created, all the association, return the view. This is the basic structure for every view that you're going to create. And I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to keep this as a reference template, builder, these three things. This is pretty simple. We just need to do it all the time whenever we have the association. But rest of the three things, I'm just gonna grab it and keep it somewhere as a template so that I can use it always. I'm just gonna keep it within the VIPER template. Just gonna keep it here so that I'm just gonna always grab it and drag it to each and every module I'm going to create. So we have created the chat rooms right now. Let's create the other two easily using these templates. New target, friends is the module name. Finish, grab it, keep it within modules. Sorry, where is it going? Yeah, just wanted it under this. Let it be. Compile, it's going to give an error. Go change the basic stuff. 13. Let's connect modules. Should be fine now. And let's do that whatever I told right now. Grab this, friends, cancel. Maybe it's better that I copy paste it to that location where we're creating friends. These three modules. And it might ask me to include utility here because that is one dependency. So let's add that. Now that's only giving one error. Let's see that. Okay, that's the reason, because we are not defined a view controller. Let's create a friends view controller. New file. Friends view controller. Create within friends module. Necessary stuff, get rid of that. And associate it with let's create a storyboard. View controller, friends controller, associate with the storyboard ID for instantiation. Add a table view because we are going to load all the table friends over here in the table view. Compile, and it's going to give me these changes. Friends view controller is the instantiation, this is friends, that should be fine. And now the presenter producer, which is not associated, we need to do that. We'll go to chat rooms, grab that same kind of structure, it's not going to change. Go to the friends view controller. So you can see I managed to do it pretty easily right now. And then this is the only thing which we need right now to instantiate it. We don't have setup UI, setup binding, not yet. That's it. So this is also ready, this view controller. Now we need a profile, the last one. Create that. You can see how it is easy it has become right now, creating a module. Even we can, maybe if I can do some scripting, I don't know how to do that. You can just create, let's say something like I do it in Laravel projects, PHP project, where you can just execute some commands and it creates a whole module for you. You can try doing that. I don't know how to do it in Xcode and Swift. Maybe that's a good, if you know, maybe let me know. So this is the profile section. Create that. What did I create? Profile. profile, build settings, let's connect modules, profile, compiles fine. So let's add those templates, go to profiles, add it, and then include it within the project. Profile, finish. It's going to give error, so let's build other things which it needed. View controller, profile, view controller, and the storyboard. Add the view controller, same structure, profile, view controller, associate the storyboard ID, go back to the builder, even okay, utility is already there. We need to import that to profile as well. Build faces, dependencies, utility, and go back, change it to profile, view controller, and this should be in profile. Yes, and what, two more things. This one, and finally association of the presenter, instantiation. Last step, I guess that's done. So we have created the 3 modules which are needed. Only that now whatever we need to do is to load it within the Tabbar. So let's do that.